Well, there's something we're more used to seeing in TV shows and movies than in the headlines, but this week has been a reminder that prison breaks are very much real because a manhunt is still underway for a prisoner who escaped from the Townsville Correctional Centre last Sunday. Jamie Lee Roberts absconded from the facility's low-security farm. Authorities say he could be driving a white Toyota Hilux and may try to leave the state. Now, people are being urged not to approach him, and if they see him, to contact police immediately. And it got us thinking on the morning show, how common are prison breaks? And when a prisoner does get out and cross those state boundaries, how likely is it that they end up back behind bars? Now, Dr. Terry Goldsworthy is a criminologist at Bond University, and he's also spent 28 years working as a police officer. Dr. Goldsworthy, welcome to ABC Mornings.
Yeah, good morning, Henry.
So, broadly speaking, in Queensland and Australia, how common are prison breaks?
Look, they're not as common as we think, Henry, and you can get this data off the web. It's available publicly, made available by the federal government in its report on government services, where it looks at how many escapes each state has. So in Queensland, we had 4 escapes in 2021, and in 2020 we had 10. So the number's gone down, but you can get a more historical examination if you want it. So they've been quite low. I mean, within that, though, it is a bit technical for corrective services. They talk about open prison escapes and secure prison escapes. So by an open prison, we're talking about, a prison or facility where they manage prisoners by not requiring them to be confined by a secure perimeter of a physical barrier. So that's what an open prison is, and the majority of our escapes, in fact, almost all of them in the last 3-4 years, have been from open prison facilities, so not the secure ones, which we probably would associate with escapes.
So I imagine these open security settings, are they usually somewhere where inmates are transferred to towards the end of their sentence?
Well, it is. I mean, I've never worked in corrections, but from my knowledge in working in the police is that, they do risk assessments on prisoners, and I would be very surprised if, risk assessment wasn't done on this fellow to say that he was suitable for working in those open type areas, for the very reason that you don't want them to be a threat to the staff nor the public. So those risk assessments would have been carried out. Of course, people see an opportunity and sometimes they take it for whatever reason, be they get information that there's issues happening outside they want to get back out to deal with or whatever. Circumstances change and they take the opportunity to get away and escape.
I suppose, the reason I ask is if it was the case that prisoners were being moved into those lower security facilities and settings towards the end of a sentence, it's strange from the psychology point of view that they would want to risk everything just to get away a little bit earlier. Is that strange to you when you see these prison escapes?
Oh, it is. I mean, it is very strange that someone who is coming close to the end would make that decision choice, and it wouldn't appear rational to us. So, I mean, that's what I was kind of alluding to, I guess, that, is there some kind of external influences affecting their decision process that they think short-term it's a better outcome for them. Long-term it obviously won't be. I mean, the overwhelming majority of people who escape jail are located and then they get sentenced to a longer period for the offence of the escape. So it's problematic for them in terms of doing that kind of activity.
Dr. Goldsworthy, you said the majority of prisoners who escape are found. Is there a window of opportunity here? Jamie Lee Roberts has been missing since Sunday. Is it less likely that he'll be found the more days that an escaped inmate is at large?
Yeah, it probably would be. I mean, the police resources are finite. They can't leave people on these kind of matters all the time. I mean, he was in jail for an assault on a police officer, so he's got a tendency to violence, obviously. I'm not aware of his criminal history of how serious that is, but that will obviously be some kind of determination the police will make and how long they and how many resources they put into pursuing them. We do have a corrective services investigation unit attached to the homicide squad in Brisbane and the Crime Intelligence Command. Now, they're primarily there to investigate offences within the prison system, but certainly in my time at police, they did also pay some attention to people who had escaped from correctional facilities. So, I mean, he'll be flagged, he'll be on the system. Like anything in the media, there's a short media life cycle. So how long the police are able to maintain the pressure on him by having his pictures out there won't be that long, I wouldn't think.
You're joined by criminologist Dr. Terry Goldsworthy. Doctor, please believe that Roberts may attempt to travel to New South Wales, South Australia or the Northern Territory. When an escaped prisoner manages to get across a state border, is it basically game over?
Look, it's much more difficult. I mean, because it's obviously not New South Wales' problem necessarily. Having said that, it'd be flagged on national databases as being a wanted person if he's pulled up and spoken to. But certainly, I mean, once you go across that border, I mean, once he even gets out of Townsville, the imperative to look for him will be lessened. I mean, police on the Gold Coast are worrying about crime on the Gold Coast. They're not necessarily looking for a fugitive from Townsville, unless, of course, they get specific intelligence, in which case they'll act on that if it's in their area, obviously.
You had a long career in policing yourself. Did you ever have involvement in a manhunt of this sort?
No, not really. I can't. That's the thing that myself, I can't really recall ever having to, track down escapees. I mean, I had a few people escape when they were arrested. You had to chase through the streets of Surfers Paradise, but not a custodial escape.
Now, before I let you go, Dr. Terry Goldsworthy, Townsville Correctional Centre specifically has had 5 prison breaks in as many years. What does this say about the state of prison security in our rehabilitation centres? Is it a cause for concern?
Well, look, I mean, it's interesting you say that because the data shows, if you look at the data that's put out by the governments, in Queensland government in particular, it shows no secure escapes for the last 3 years. And this is where I said, the definitions become really technical and, they don't, they get their definitions from the United Nations in terms of how they count the rates and who's a prisoner, who isn't, and how they're held. What they don't include are prisoners who don't come back from unescorted leave or work release, work parties outside the prison, things like that. Those kind of things aren't actually counted in the national escape figures. So, I mean, in 2019, we had 2 of those where people just walk off outside the prisons. They weren't counted. So it's difficult to see what's been captured. But, I mean, on the figures, our prison system would say to you that no one is escaping from within a secure facility.
And Dr. Terry Goldsworthy, before I let you go, the public are being urged not to approach Jamie Lee Roberts. If they see him, they've been told just contact police. How important is that to remember?
Yeah, that's a very important message for people to get. I mean, just observe and contact the police. There's no need to go over and try to play the hero. I mean, you just don't know what's on this fellow's mind. As we've talked about, if you're at the end of the sentence, a bit silly to escape. So what's motivating him? You just don't know. That could drive him to be, react in a way that's quite violent. So the police are paid professionals. They're trained to deal with these things. So let the police deal with it. That's who should be.
Criminologist Dr. Terry Goldsworthy, appreciate your time on ABC Mornings.